Hi, welcome to City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Mr. Mayor, Your Honor.
Hey, Walt, it's great to see you.
Good to have you here in the studio.
Thanks.
And I think you and I have talked about this show. We want to talk about the city budget. And a lot of people are not aware of how the budget is developed and what our sources of revenue are in to fill that budget and basically the different issues that need to be taken into account, the factors that determine where the money, what bucket within that big budget things go. So maybe as an overview, you can tell us what are the major things that the city has to do that we need money for.
Sure. Well, first, we've had a great summer, and it's been, our concerts in the parks, our kids' park programs, our summer learning programs in the schools. There's been a lot of great things going on. A lot of activity, a lot of infrastructure work, a lot of new sidewalks, new streets are repaving. So there's a lot happening in the community, and we're now well into the first quarter of the fiscal year, and there continue to be a lot of demands, a lot of competing demands, a lot of overall need. And so to answer your question more directly, right? What city government does, what local government does, really at its core, it's a couple of things. Right? It's work to try to maintain and improve infrastructure and deliver services. Maybe I should say the other way around, because the deliver services is the majority, a strong majority of what we're expected to do. From parks and senior services, veteran services, public health, public safety, schools, all the maintenance, as I said, of our infrastructure, and you can't do it without staff. I mean, it's all dependent on our really talented, really committed school and city staff to really deliver all these services. So that's the core of the budget: is salary, pensions, healthcare costs, and then whatever we're able to invest in infrastructure.
Right.
And then the other thing people look to city government to do, I think, kind of broadly, is try to address and solve challenges and problems, and that's right across the spectrum of of anything you can think of.
And nobody knows what's
coming next
on the horizon.
Right.
And I do want to point out one thing, that most people, when you say services, most people see that, okay? But the infrastructure part, that's the stuff that the city's doing kind of behind the scenes that they don't really realize that's got to be kept up. Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, so. Where does the money come from is the big question. So I think I want you to talk to this slide, and if Michelle can get this slide up, and this will show where we get the money to run the city.
So there are really the handful of big categories, right? Are the biggest by far is our own local property tax that is assessed every year on every one of us who own property.
And the big blue chunk on the pie chart there.
So that's the lion's share of revenues to deliver our local services. The other next biggest piece is generally state aid, and then so the blue. Let me just get my glasses on here. Well, because that's too far away on the screen for us.
We're in the same boat.
So the light blue is the residential tax, the homeowner.
Right.
And then the kind of to the left of it, down around, around 8, 9 o'clock, that's commercial industrial property. So your business tax base and your residential tax base.
Right. And the yellow,
and those together make up by far the highest amount.
That's easily.
State aid is that kind of up to the top left corner. That's about 14% of our budget. Motor vehicle excise taxes, any of us who have a residence in Beverly and have a car or some kind of vehicle, we're paying local excise taxes. And then there's another small category of a number of catch-all smaller revenue pieces like building permits and things like that.
And I think, Now, one of the things you just mentioned, I want to drill down a little bit into that, is state aid. And that's kind of gone, I remember 20 years ago, that was a healthy part of the budget. But nowadays, it's different. I want you to talk to the next slide, Michelle.
Yeah.
This will show you where state aid has gone vis-a-vis the other revenue categories from the pie chart. So
this is important for all of us trying to understand what local government has the ability to do and doesn't have the ability to do,
right.
and just where the money will stretch to.
Right.
You look at the blue, and that represents And we started with fiscal year 2002 because that's right before that recession hit.
Right.
So during the two recessions, 2002 and again late 2008, the state drastically cut,
Right.
as a response to the recession, our aid.
Right.
And it's never recovered. Right? Never recovered since.
Yeah,
So the blue shows that back in fiscal year 2002, state aid came in an amount of money that was equivalent to about 22% of our local budget. Today, it only covers about 14% of our local budget. And the real difference, now there's commercial property taxpayers pay about 3% more of the overall budget, but it's the residential. It's you and me on our homes. We're paying about 9% more
Right.
of the overall local budget because the state has really walked away from our needs.
Yeah.
And so I say that, let's look at a different number, right? Local property taxes back in fiscal year '02 were about $41 million. Local residential property tax, about
Right.
$41 million. Now they're 98. 57 million more in the last 22 years, where state aid is only up about 6 million in that same 22
Right.
years.
So,
You know, and so first it got cut a lot, it had to recover some. But it hasn't kept pace anywhere near what we need it to. And that puts not all, but much, much more of the pressure on the local property tax owner to deliver the things that everybody cares about and needs.
Yeah.
And that's right across the spectrum, right? I mean, I said it already, but I want to hammer it home here. You know, it's being able to build sidewalks and repair sidewalks so people can move around safely. It's to be able to ensure that police, fire, and ambulance responses are quick and that we're, sufficiently staffed. It's to be able to ensure that our seniors and our veterans have services they need, and our public health is on top of the things that need attention, out and around the community, and so many more.
yeah. Now, what can you compare the residential tax rate per thousand from that time period, maybe the time that you have been mayor, to what it is now?
Well, what I can say is that our residential rate per thousand is below the regional average.
Okay.
By some, and our average homeowner, if you look at the average home value right now, the average home value means that homeowner's paying about $8,000 in property taxes this year, whereas regionally the average is over $9,000.
Okay.
So we're below, and we fight hard to stay there. And at the same time, Proposition 2.5, we go and have for 40 plus years
Yep.
gone to that levy limit almost every year.
Yep.
For the last 3 years, we didn't. We collectively, the city council, me, our financial team, we said, all right, the pressure is hard, so let's try to stay below. So we've been able to stay somewhat below that 2.5 cap, but that's, we can't keep doing that. So in this current budget, we've kind of gotten some of that back, and next year the expectation is we will go all the way to the levy limit because the demands for all of our services, and in particular, the demands for our employees are great.
Yeah.
Every contract in the city, school and city side, are all up. They're all expired. They're all, we've been negotiating with our units, and this next round of contracts is going to require us, to again go to the levy limit, for one, and two, to ensure that that we compensate our employees in a way that is, equitable and fair and what's needed.
And with inflation kind of driving everything up, so the costs to the city go up. So you either have to, have the residential tax rates take that cost, or let people go or whatever. So what's your message to the folks in the city about the residential tax rate and what they're paying?
Yeah, I mean, one, as I said, we've been able to hold it down some the last couple of years and provide some relief. That doesn't mean taxes have gone down. They haven't. They continually go up because 2.5, and the fact that in our state the property tax is the main way cities and towns fund services, and that our state aid has become less and less reliable. But I guess the flip side of that is, we have, by the end of this calendar year, we will have put almost $100 million into road and sidewalk and intersection improvements for safety and all in my 11 years as mayor. We also, I believe we have the highest quality services right across our community. We've increased staffing in the fire department by 8 firefighters since I've been in office. We have increased the police staffing by about 6 full-time employees, and we are about to finally, after a lot of efforts and preparation, we're fully staffed up and we're training our civilian dispatch personnel to take over from uniformed police officers when 911 calls are made in to the 911 call center. And so that'll put an additional several police officers, which averages out to about one officer on every shift all the time, back on the street. So, we've worked really hard to deliver those services, and we need to keep on doing that so that this community is all it can be.
Yeah, and I might add from a personal note that I think the road improvements have just been such a good thing for the city, and the roundabouts, the traffic circles have really aided. There were those two one by where Gloucester Crossing is now, and the other one at Essex Street. So it's that's a big help because I go through those intersections all the time.
Yeah, and other places where we have improved signals or put new signals. All the intersection work in the city that we have done and are doing is calculated to make it safer for everybody who's using the roads, right? That's people who walk, people who bike, people who drive, and to move more reliably and efficiently cars through those intersections. And, I think we've had a great deal of success with that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to change gears a little bit or drill down into one of the revenue or the cost components in the city budget. School has started. We're back. The kids are back in school. And right now, the teachers' current contract, which expired, I believe, August 31st, they're still working under the terms of the old contract. But right now, the school committee and the teachers teachers union, if I may, are kind of going back and forth on trying to work out some of the especially the salaries for that. So.
I just want to say one thing there before we really get going into it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Is anybody who's working beyond the expiration of a contract, they're still being protected under the terms of the expired contract. They're still getting their paycheck every pay period.
Right.
And so nothing's changed except that we're still working together with those unions to agree on and settle what you call successor or next agreements. And so when those contracts are settled, there will assuredly be retroactively pay increases, and those will be to the beginning of the contract. Yeah. So just the fact that, that somebody is, quote, working without a contract, they never really are.
Yeah.
So it's both protections and terms and everything is in place. And look, I respect and value everybody who works for the city, and whether they're union or non-union, and we're trying our darndest to make sure that we're able to compensate people and treat them as professionally and as well as our resources allow us to.
Yeah, well said. So kind of give us an overview of where are we now in that negotiating process currently? Sure.
And there is a slide that I think can help in this conversation when we're talking about the educators' contracts.
Yeah.
So our educators, both our teachers and our paraprofessionals, they made the points to us that we were falling behind some neighboring districts and comparable districts, and we looked at everything and we agreed with them. And so, I went to the school committee, and the school committee agreed, and we went to the city council really for a record investment in schools in fiscal year 25. So more money than I think the city's ever put into the schools in new spending from one year to the next. $5.1 million in new city money from last June 30 to this year starting July 1, in addition to another $600,000 in state aid. So about $5.7 million in new money for the schools. And with that, we essentially scrapped our old salary schedules, and we embraced new schedules that would really try to make up a good amount of those, what we saw were our salaries lagging behind. Yeah. And so we were able to do that. If you see this up here,
talk to that slide for us.
That's on the school's website as well. This is what's on the table as our proposal to our teachers. These are 4 examples of many different steps on the salary schedule. And if you look from left to right, the left-hand numbers are what teachers at those levels would have been paid this past school year. And the offers for first year, second year, third year of the schedule of the new contract would have each of those teachers earning $20,000 more or more than $20,000 more than they earned this past year by the end of this third year of the contract.
Yeah.
So what it represents is a big jump in year one of trying to adjust the schedule to where it needs to be, and then you can see the numbers. And so what happens is teachers move steps for every year they're here up until step 12. And we have other offers on the table in this contract to add a step. So for each step they move, they get close to 5% increase. Teachers also can earn credits to move up, to move across columns
Right.
with more, masters and beyond masters, et cetera. And that's about, each time they're able to move a column, that's another 4%. So some years,
Yeah.
many of our teachers will earn whatever the COLA is for that year,
Right.
plus one or the other or both of those. Doesn't happen every year, but
Yeah.
there's a lot in there to help those teachers get to where we know they need to be.
Right.
So with our with our paraprofessionals, which is a different unit, so the teachers are salaried, paraprofessionals are hourly.
Are they covered by the school contract, by the school budget?
Oh yeah, of course,
they're all,
of course, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So our paraprofessionals also need a significant pay increase, and so what we have on the table, what we've offered in year one, is to add $4,000 to some of their income and $6,000 to other. It depends. We have a couple different types of paras who are working directly as we have classroom, we have program paras.
Yeah.
So anyway, $4,000 to $6,000 increase right away, and then adding 3% on top of that in year one, and then we have proposed 4%, 3.5% in years 2 and 3. These are big moves.
Yeah.
And what we see is that we're getting both our paras and our teachers much more in line with their peers in surrounding communities where we need them to be. And in order to do this, we have done a number of things. We over the last several years, we built a line item in the city budget for roads and sidewalks. When I took office, it was zero. We built it to $2.7 million a year. And in order to keep city government moving and deliver all of our services, and that, as I said, it's not entirely, but it significantly includes all of our employees right across the city roles, we have cut that road and sidewalk budget in FY25, and we expect to cut it again next year to zero. That doesn't mean we're not going to do road and sidewalk work, but it means we're going to need to look to our cash reserves to fund our road and sidewalk work.
Right.
And we had worked really hard to build it into the operating budget, and it's okay.
Right.
But I guess what that points to is how tight the finances are in a city like ours that isn't really well served by state aid.
Right. And I have a question for you on that coming up. But Michelle, can you put that last slide back up again? And I'd like the mayor to just clarify. Okay, so now the left-hand column, the orange column,
Yeah.
going down that column, tell us what that represents.
Sure. So those are examples of where teachers are on the salary schedule. There are
Right.
many, many more. And the spreadsheet that shows all of it is on the school website, beverlyschools.org.
Now, is the lowest one here the highest level, or is there a high?
Yeah. So the top one there would essentially be entry level.
Okay.
And the bottom one is I think representative of our highest
Tenured people.
our highest salary.
Okay.
And so as you can see, right now and in FY24, we agreed that those numbers aren't where they need to be.
Yeah.
So they're going up significantly in this proposal. And as I said, we're needing to really tighten our belts in many other places within the city budget to do so.
Right. Now, the first column is what's currently in the city budget, correct?
So what's proposed for FY25 is what we can spend.
Right.
Yes.
So that's currently what's in the budget.
Right.
And that's what's being, in other words, if some other figure comes up during the negotiations, then that's going to have to be adjusted, or how is that going to work?
Well, I mean, we've extended ourselves.
Yeah.
We're at our limit. $5.7 million new spending in the
Yes.
schools. On top of the fact that, listen, in my 11 years of building budgets, the state has given us about $8 million more for our schools, rebounding back from their cuts.
Right.
We put in $22 million in city money. So $22 million from the city, $8 million from the state. And by the way, that 8 sounds bigger than the 6 million in new state aid that I said we've gotten in the last 22 years.
Yeah.
It's because we're getting less state money
Yeah.
for the city accounts. And so we're having to tighten our belts already because the state has really walked away from the city accounts that they fund.
Okay.
They've done a little better with the schools, but yeah, I mean, we every bit of money that we have is across the table.
Yeah. And of course, it's a real balancing act, isn't it, Michael?
It is. I mean, you know, as I said, we're zeroing out that road and sidewalk line with full intention of using cash reserves to fund our roads and sidewalks. But I will tell you that when the city went into the last 2 recessions, there were little to no cash reserves.
Yeah.
We need cash reserves on hand to help us whenever the next recession comes.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of reserves.
Right. Now, we have a slide that shows the cash reserves.
Now that'll help to see.
Yeah.
So this is I wanted to show this. We have 2 types of reserves. There are cash reserves, which is they're dollars in our bank accounts that are not obligated already to pay a bill. And at the end of every fiscal year, when we close our books, the state looks at and they certify a number for us. They call it free cash. It's a horrible term.
Yeah.
It means cash reserves.
Yeah.
And so that's money we have in case something goes sideways, something goes bad. In addition to that, we have our stabilization fund. And our cash reserves and our stabilization fund taken together are supposed to be somewhere between 13 and 23% of our operating budget.
Okay.
That's DOR, state finance folks, as well as bond rating agencies. That's their best counsel, their best financial
where they say we
practices.
should
Because
be, yeah.
the goal is, or the need is, when we do have a recession, whenever it may be, we can't be running away from our services. We can't be laying people off
Right,
left and right.
right.
We need to be able to continue to deliver high quality needed services right on through a 3-year recession. And so we're in a decent place with reserves. We're at about 17% when you add the cash reserves and the stabilization fund. People are trying to say that we should spend that now on contracts. We can't.
Yeah.
You can't spend reserves on recurring operating costs, right? You got to have them there because just as somebody really cares about their 3rd grader's education this current year, that same parent or those parents are going to care about their education in 3 years when they're in 6th grade, in 4 years when they're in 7th grade. And if we're in the middle of a recession right then, we need that money now to be there then.
Yeah.
So we can keep delivering a high quality education. So our reserves really need to be understood not to be something to tap.
Right.
Because there's a greater appetite for spending today than we can meet.
Right. So folks who are agitating for tapping into the reserves, it's like it's the devil to pay down the road, right?
It is. And
So
if we could put that slide back up, that's meant to show just a couple of, those are just some examples on things that we've been able to do with cash reserves, right?
Yeah.
In the last several years. And if you look at it, when we had that monster winter with all the blizzards in 2015, $1.5 million we spent that we didn't have in you know, putting down ice, salt, and plowing. Herd Stadium seating, the 3 intersections at Henry's, the Golf and Tennis Club, and down by the waterfront. We have to pay for design work for projects that we want the state to spend for the construction of.
Was that right?
And we did that with the 1A project. We did that with those 3 intersections. We did that with Bridge Street. We pay for the design. The state and federal money pays for the construction. You know, so that's an
aware of that.
North Beverly Fire Station needed some improvements. We had to put new roofs on the DPW buildings. The high school needed new electrical switches. We built softball fields and a new track. We bought a new fire department ladder truck. We bought those 2 lots on Simon Street to turn into downtown pocket parks for a neighborhood that desperately needed green space, just across the board. And then at the bottom, you see some of the bigger ticket items that we put money into. You try to spend reserves as you go for bigger price tags that aren't big enough to borrow for.
Right.
Like if you have to take a tree or 2 down in your yard, right? If you if you're remodeling or adding an addition, you're likely going to do a home equity line and pay it back, right? Whereas if you're doing some, a new hot water tank, things like that, you might try to pay with cash, right? If you've got, and that's an example with the reserves.
That's a good analogy,
But those reserves can't be kind of bled away. They have to remain at a level that we can turn to when the recession comes. So there are a couple of real values with those reserves, as you can see.
It's like if you start tapping into those reserves on recurring ongoing costs, they're going to keep eating that, and then it's slowly but surely, if that ends, if you eat all of those reserves, or a good portion of them, then what do you do the next time around, right? So,
right. Well, I mean, Beverly didn't have reserves in those two recessions. Not a fault of anybody.
Yeah.
Really, Mayor Scanlon, my predecessor, came in, the city was almost in receivership. Did a lot of really necessary things, and then was hit with two awful recessions. But my point is, the city didn't have that money to help move it through, had to do some pretty tough things during those recessions. And we want to try to make sure that from public safety to our senior services, to our veterans, to our parks, to our classrooms, and that means our kids and it means our educators, we want to make sure that the money's there now to compensate them right. And I feel that we've put that on the table, and they're really going to be in a much, much better place, much more competitive place. And then we'll have the wherewithal to keep on doing those things when times are tougher, as long as we recognize that our reserves are meant for that. We can't be spending them now.
Right, understood. Now, I just want you to touch on a couple of things. There have been meetings with the school committee and the teachers union, et cetera, and some of the things that have been brought up, and I just want to get your comment on this. The average investment by Beverly per student in our system, I think the comment has come by that that's much lower than in other cities. Is there data one way or the other that would shed light on that?
We've tried to pull apart some of those numbers that have been put in front of us, and I still have questions for Department of Revenue, and we're trying to work with them. I can tell you that the lion's share of the debt service in Beverly is to service debt on building new schools. That isn't really credited. But let me say this. I said a minute ago, Beverly was in a real tough way for a long time, right? And then during that time, state aid was drastically reduced and has never recovered. So, we are putting everything we can into the schools every year, and we listen very carefully and in good faith to our educators, and that's why that increase for this year is so much higher than it's been in the past. But even in the past, as I said, $22 million in new city money to the schools. That averages $2 million a year for my 11 years as mayor, and we'll keep putting everything we possibly can without undermining the city's financial footing, so that we can deliver all the services people need. Right.
Now, we just have about a minute left, Mr. Mayor. So if you want to just kind of summarize for our viewers quickly what you think is going to happen, and from your viewpoint.
I think if we can all keep a perspective as we're looking at what everybody feels they need and wants out of city government, we greatly value every one of our employees. We're working with every one of our units on the city and on the school side to try to make sure they're appropriately compensated and well treated. We're doing everything we can to make our schools all they can be. I think our schools. I think our kids achieve at a high level. I think our educators teach at a high level. I think great things go on. We will continue to value and respect everybody in this community, and continue to deliver on that need for services. Again, it cuts across everything. And I think we're in a great place. I think Beverly is a strong community in so many ways, and I think we have so many people in this community who contribute, and we'll keep looking to that and trying to tap that and put the resources where they need to be, and keep the fight going to bring more resources to bear. Is another real key point here.
Very good, Mr. Mayor. So, Michael, thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to remind our viewers, you've been watching City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and we'll see you next time.